It's exactly as I predicted. You know, Harmon Smith saw this coming, I think, before anyone else did. And at the moment, it feels like no one else has really caught on. This is a thing yet. But I've been looking on message boards. I've been seeing like YouTube comments. I've been seeing like YouTube videos from perceived Fromsoft fans, acknowledging this. Fromsoft fans are not happy that Duskbloods is a Nintendo exclusive. Right now, there's like some coping and some seething that this game might come to like the real gaming platforms later on down the line, but this is being published by Nintendo. This is clearly a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive thing. Nintendo clearly secured this as a system seller for these kind of people, so these people can't just sit there and cry about how like FromSoft games are better whenever Nintendo announces a new game. Clearly this should be seen as a big deal for those of you who genuinely believe that Elden Ring was one of the best games ever made. It wasn't. Like, it was, this should have been this huge, phenomenal deal. And I suppose this is evidence that it's not, The fact that so many people saw this trailer, know it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive, and all they can think to themselves is, I'm not gonna buy that. Like, every single time, exactly like with Bayonetta 2, only like a little bit more downplayed because they know how bad it makes them look. Because people know just how badly, Nintendo fans clowned on them after the Bayonetta 2 debacle. Like, these guys are kind of, like, seething underground. It's kind of like an underground thing. They're like rats, just scurrying throughout, Twitter and the comment sections of videos, just seething to themselves, just like, just you wait. Just you wait. I'm gonna emulate that. It's just like, what? Like, you're not gonna do shit. It's amazing to kind of see like the endless seething from these people, because the developer that they propped up, that they worshipped, that they thought was like, they seriously tried to promote as being the best in the industry, is now in a partnership with Nintendo and is now producing an entirely new IP alongside them. And what that means is that, like, no longer can these people use FromSoft's titles as a bludgeon against Nintendo games, because it's on that platform. So, like, if it seriously was, like, if people seriously believed that Duskbloods was good, like, oh, I'll pick that up, it's not a big deal, Like, if Elden Ring really was better than Zelda, if it really did sell more than Zelda, it did not. It wouldn't be a big deal, because Zelda is just so much more iconic of a thing, and just has so many other different games, and it's just constantly growing and evolving, as opposed to like FromSoft, which is just a passing fad, something that like became relevant because there was nothing else to play on that platform, and it's just imploded, right? That's kind of what we're seeing here, honestly. We are seeing the implosion, like we are seeing people who advocated for Elden Ring as being like the best game of 2022, who advocated for Shit Stain on the Turd Tree, as being, this amazing DLC in spite of all of its problems. People who defended Night Rain, they now have to like sit there and tell themselves that like the Nintendo Switch 2 is not worth buying because Duskbloods, for some reason, is gonna be a disappointment. They seriously want this game to fail because it's a Nintendo Switch exclusive. Like, they are seriously sitting there telling us that they are not going to buy a Nintendo Switch 2 for this game. And I think it's a testament to just how these people really feel about Nintendo and how they really feel about FromSoft. Because if this was You know, if they really were like gaming fans, if they really did like these kind of games, like they would already own a Nintendo Switch. They already would be fans of Zelda. So the idea of like getting a Switch and you know, buying the new FromSoft game on it, like that shouldn't be some like controversial thing to do. You know, like if they were like actively in the community and actively like, you know, playing all these games, like it wouldn't be a big deal for them to like just buy a Switch and then buy Duskbloods on that Switch. But instead, what we're getting is all this coping and seething, this idea that the game might eventually get ported to other consoles, that even if it doesn't, it's not going to be that big of a deal anyway. It really goes to show you just how these people, what these people actually want out of FromSoft, because it's not actually a good video game franchise. They don't actually enjoy playing it. They don't actually care about it at all. Like it's superfluous. It's superfluous, right? It doesn't matter. Like the important thing about Elden Ring, the important thing about FromSoft is that it's something they can use as a status symbol, a status symbol. You know, something they can use against Nintendo fans and just hype up, you know, like they're pathetic, dying gaming platforms, you know, Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. You know, that's the mindset behind these people, right? They don't actually like or enjoy Elden Ring. It's just a trendy thing for them to talk about while they just sit around and just desperately try and get people to believe their lies about Nintendo Switch 2, right? Like, I find it very interesting, you know, seeing something like The Witcher 3, you know, which I suppose was like the new 10's equivalent, you know, seeing like what happened with that, seeing like the downfall of CD Projekt Red, seeing like the failure of Cyberpunk 2077, you know, the desperate attempts to like try and gaslight people into thinking the game was like somehow successful because of an anime series, you know, like we all saw that happen. And CD Projekt Red is simply never going to repeat that success with Witcher 3. And I think the same could be said with like FromSoft and Elden Ring. Like the hype around this brand is just has reached a point where like it doesn't really live up to like its idealized status, you know, like the game is not as good as people make it out to be. And as more and more people begin to realize that, as they begin to push back against the game, what you're going to see is this like collapse of epic proportions. And in a situation like this, where the fanboys have an incentive to not defend Duskbloods, to acknowledge that like FromSoft dropped the ball and put out something that like nobody actually wanted to play, like the illusion is just going to start crumbling. You know, like they are in a bad position. You know, FromSoft is well on its way, I think, to just being a studio that develops games on Nintendo platforms. You know, they don't even have to be exclusives. You know, their big game, the one everybody tried to tell you was like the best game of the generation, is now on Nintendo consoles and will get easily outstripped by Zelda and Pokemon. You know, that's the reality of our current situation in gaming. You know, like the fact of the matter is, even if games like this become successful, even if people like them, they cannot compete with Nintendo long term. They are going to bend the knee and develop on the platform eventually, because Nintendo is simply too big of a console brand to ignore.